This is DC, powered by people and ideas, where the community comes together, voices are heard, and decisions are shaped.
So I want to start by saying, welcome home.
Connecting you to what matters and to each other.
How you doing? You know, what's the tea?
I'm Lorenzo Hall, and this is the DC Beat.
And welcome to the DC Beat. Good to see you. I'm Lorenzo Hall. So you know what happens in 3 weeks? DC's emergency juvenile curfew bill expires on April 15th. So you know this put in place a citywide curfew for those under the age of 18 from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. 7 days a week. The police chief can also establish extended juvenile curfew zones starting as early as 8 p.m. So you know this all began last summer after a few violent incidents involving teens in several hot spots. We're talking Navy Yard, the Wharf, and U Street. The original order was extended late last year after these takeovers and the violence just continued. So a lot of people are asking, what now? Will it be extended again? This past weekend, for instance, there was a teen takeover in Navy Yard. Officers responded to young people setting off illegal fireworks near the waterfront metro station. The weekend prior, 200 kids gathered in Navy Yard. There were assaults, robberies, along with gunfire. 2 teens were arrested. So with all that said, let's do a beat check right now to find out what is next, answering those questions with candidate for DC Delegate Brooke Pinto, who is currently the Ward 2 council member and chairs the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. Brooke Pinto, thank you for being here with us. I appreciate it.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so first up, what is next for this juvenile curfew? We know it expires in 3 weeks from now, and a lot of folks are wondering, will it be extended again, or is this it? Are we done?
So let me first just say the vast majority of our young people in Washington, D.C. are doing amazing things, are involved in school and after school activities, are doing great things in sports and theater, and it's really inspiring to see. Mm-hmm. We have a small group of young people who has been consistently causing challenges, especially when it comes to violence and fights and what are so-called youth takeovers of certain specific areas. Yeah. And so last year I moved legislation that created authority for MPD to have targeted juvenile curfew zones in specific areas when MPD is receiving intel or information that one of these planned youth takeovers or fights or shooting is planned to happen. Mm-hmm. They have been very effective at creating these zones to make very clear that if there's a planned fight going on that we know about, it's not going to be open for business late at night. Right. And so I am moving an extension on Tuesday during our legislative meeting, which will essentially remove the sunset. The curfew sunsets on April 15th, mm-hmm. and my bill will remove that sunset, so it'll extend it until September to make sure we get through the spring and summer months. I'll also be moving a permanent bill through committee in the coming weeks. But this emergency bill is important so that there's no gap, so that we don't see things like we sadly saw again last weekend in Navy Yard.
Yeah. So how do you get other council members on board? We know the last time it was extended, some said, they were reluctant. They said, this is it. We're not going to do it again. We have to find a permanent solution. But here we are again saying we have to extend it.
Yeah. Well, I would say to my colleagues, as I do regularly, we have to do both of these things. I introduced a bill 2 years ago to open up our rec spaces and schools on nights and weekends to our kids. That bill is still sitting in committee. I introduced 24 bills last fall, half of which deal with supporting our young people, creating new teen centers in all of our quadrants, creating a jobs app to connect kids to paying jobs, which is one of the most consistent feedback I hear from kids. Those bills are still sitting in other members' committees. It's the same members who are saying that they don't support the juvenile curfew because they want to do more programming for kids. Yeah. So I would say absolutely let's do both of these things, but I need them to move those bills forward. I will also say part of the negotiation of extending the curfew was a conversation with the mayor around offering more programming now immediately this spring, which she is going to be doing, and especially we're going to see that in wards 6 and 8 where we have been seeing some of these instances particularly, and so I think that is also going to help creating some more optionality for kids to be in a safe place to be kids, as of course we want them to do and we should be encouraging them to do throughout the city.
So what does some of that programming look like? We heard from the mayor roughly 2 weeks ago. What did she say? We can talk until we're blue in the face about the kids need more to do. Kids have ample programs to do. What we need is accountability for families and children who think that it's okay to treat any neighborhood like that. So it sounds like the mayor is saying we already have a lot of programs, so what more is there to do?
Well, she'll be offering more programming this spring that will really create more spaces for kids to be and recreate. The same way that we did Late Night Hype last summer, that type of programming where we say, you know, it's not necessarily that we're going to offer every sort of activity. It's really creating the space and the indoor space to be able to have kids hang out safely and to have adults available if something does happen or if kids need help. But kids, like adults, want to be together, want to recreate, and that's great. We want to be encouraging that. It is never okay to bring a knife or a gun to a public space and start shooting or fight your peers. That is not acceptable. And I think we have to be unequivocal in our clarity around that we have to be treating all our neighbors with respect and with peace. Yeah,
so we know you're keeping busy lately. You're on the council. You're also running for DC delegate. A lot of lawmakers on the Hill and also the federal government, they've been adamant about putting forward stricter punishments for teens in DC. So if you are in this role to serve as DC's delegate, what do you tell lawmakers on the Hill? What do you tell the federal government about teens and crime in DC? What sort of picture do you paint for them?
So I'm doing a lot of this work now, and that's what really inspired me to run to be DC's congressional delegate, is that I have been and continue to be in those meetings, meeting with members on the Hill in the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, explaining to them kind of who we are in DC and how our laws and structures are set up, what would be helpful from them and what would not be helpful from them. So when it comes to crime and violence, I have some credibility on the matter on the Hill because I moved several years ago the district's largest piece of legislation in our history called Secure DC, which did 100 different things from prevention, accountability, government coordination. And since we've passed that bill, violent crime has come down 60%. And so when I'm in those meetings, members understand that I am serious when it comes to public safety. I'm serious in my belief that every person should be safe in every neighborhood of DC. I'm also serious when I say to them, it is not helpful for them to move legislation that would authorize any Trump-appointed prosecutor to prosecute a 14-year-old child as an adult and send them to any adult prison across the country. That is bad for public safety. That is bad policy. That is not what we stand for here in DC, and I will fight that and am fighting that. It is not the right policy when Republicans were moving a bill several months ago that would have disallowed the DC Council from ever changing our criminal laws up or down. It convinced Speaker Johnson to pull that bill from the House floor. And so credibility matters in this position, in these relationships, especially with non-traditional voting power. You have to be able to leverage a broader coalition and really make sure that we are focused on public safety. We should be ensuring that all of our positions at our courts are filled. We have 22% vacancy right now in our courts. We should be making sure our supervision agencies are fully staffed. Those are managed by the federal government. But these proposals that some Republicans continue trying to push would not work for the district and would undermine our public safety, and I have been and will continue to be clear about that.
All right, so while I have you here now, we know that Mayor Bowser signed off on your bill compelling MPD to release body camera footage if there's a use of force incident involving federal agents, but she vetoed the companion bill, which would essentially say that you can't document these officers on these crime scenes, federal agents who are on crime scenes with DC police officers in use of force cases. Is this the end? Does council take action next week to override the mayor's veto in that regard?
So we have seen since August 11th, 2025, an increase of federal presence in our city. And we have most concerningly seen this with the use of ICE agents who have been patrolling our streets, and we've had very little insight into what is going on. There have been 2 instances where a DC resident was shot by federal agents. Now, as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I can request and review that footage, but the public doesn't have access to it. And so I had a 12-hour hearing in December where I heard from hundreds of public witnesses, including the lawyers for a man who was shot while he was in his car and the bullet hit his chest. And luckily, he was not killed. But that family wants access to the footage, as they should have. And so I met with the chief and realized that we have a gap in the law that creates optionality essentially on the part of the mayor of when to release that body-worn camera footage. I had another hearing in February where we discussed this issue. I had introduced a permanent version of the bill and emergency version of the bill beforehand so we can make sure the record was very clear. Yeah. I worked with my colleagues, with stakeholders, with the mayor, with members of Congress, explaining what I was trying to do, and that my deep belief is that DC residents deserve transparency because transparency will lead to more justice. And we passed my bill that requires that anytime serious use of force is used by a federal agent and our officers are on site and capture that with their body-worn camera footage, that has to be released to the public. So I'm very pleased that that bill was signed into law, and I'm confident that we can make sure that it is sustained. That is very important in this climate that we're in, that we do the legwork and the groundwork to make sure that bills that we are passing are not just passed in the temporary, but that they're sustained.
So do you not believe that there should be some sort of documentation of the federal agents who are on scene in some of these use of force cases?
So I believe, as I introduced in my permanent version of my bill, that we need to be better documenting the federal agents that are on our crime scene suppression roll calls. Okay. That's where decisions are being made about which agents are where and where they're being deployed. Okay. That is, as I've explained to my colleagues and from site visits and dozens of meetings, I think the biggest information gap. Now, with that said, I think it would be fantastic for DC residents to have access to more information, for the council to have access to more information about who is on scene. But you'd have to ask my colleague, Robert White, if he has done that legwork to make sure that the mayor was supportive. Clearly not. To make sure that it was sustainable in Congress, I don't know. And that's a really important part of being a successful legislator, is making sure not only is the bill going to pass in our body, but making sure that it's workable and that it's going to be sustained in this climate we're in.
Okay. Brooke Pinto, DC council member and at-large council candidate, but rather candidate for DC delegate. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Lorenzo. Great to see you.
You too. All right, so, of course, we can't have this conversation without talking to teens in D.C., right? This video was posted by the anti-violence group Guns Down Friday. Organizers took a few teens out to the Navy Yard curfew zone on Friday night. And part of the caption reads to this post here, what they don't show you on the news. We took time to connect, grow, and make sure our youth understand their rights. At the table with me right now are two teens who took part in this trip. You have 14-year-old Dennis Matthews, who recently spoke to the D.C. Council about the D.C. youth experience, and 16-year-old Bryce Blanding, who spoke to council at a curfew hearing last year. Dennis, Bryce, thank you for being here with us.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so you just heard from Brooke Pinto a moment ago saying this youth curfew, the zones may be extended beyond April into September. First up, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's working? Bryce, we'll start with you.
Sir, I do not think it's working because even though the curfew is there for us, the youth, and it's like they still go against it. They stay after the curfew. So they know the curfew is here because the people, the cops and the people enforcing it, they tell them, oh, curfew coming, curfew 5 minutes, curfew 10 minutes, an hour later on. And they don't listen. They stay beyond the time.
Yeah. What about you, Dylan?
I think it could be good in some cases, but what we don't want to do is criminalize the youth, and like what we could do is invest in the youth, like mentors, jobs, so like keep them out of trouble and stuff. Like we got National Guards, but I don't really think they're doing their job. Like they should be protecting DC citizens, not
you said before, like criminalizing. That's what you mentioned before. That's how you feel. So tell me about this trip you took on Friday. What did you get out of it? What was the point of it?
So the point of it was like to like the caption said, to show what the news does not show. It was to show that maybe there are some teens out here who are doing the wrong, but us, we are doing right. We're going to programs to help us better ourselves as young men and young women. I want to get Ms. Hardy, congratulations. Her name is Joanna Hardy. She started this program, Guns Down Friday. And so basically, it's like, is she bringing the youth together and trying to keep us out the streets and out the way. And so what we did was we went to a play about DC's history, teaching like the youth like how DC came about and where we are now. And then after that, we went to Chipotle. She fed us very good.
Food's always important, right?
Yes, very good. After we did that, we played some basketball. 5v5. It was a really nice time. Everybody enjoyed themselves.
And it kept you busy on a Friday night.
Kept me busy, yes.
So tell me, what do you want to see from the city, Denham? What do you need right now if city leaders are watching you and they're making these decisions about your future?
Yes, I think we need protection. Like, they're patrolling us, not protecting us. But we could use better supervision from the National Guards, from police. But yeah, the curfew, I think is better because it's preventing the teenagers from, like, the crime rate is high at night. So I think it's best, the curfew is best, in my opinion.
So where do you go from here? You see these curfews, you heard the mayor saying, you know, we can talk till we're blue in the face. There are plenty of programs out there for teens to get involved with. Do you agree with the mayor there? Are there enough programs for you?
No, there are not programs for us because before Ms. Hardy programs came around, I didn't know of a program, like, at all. The only other program I knew of was Trigger Project ran by Ms. Tia. That's also a nice program. But before the summer, I didn't know of any programs.
Yeah. What about you? Have you heard of any, Denham?
No, sir.
Nothing?
But when I heard about the Guns Down program, best thing that ever happened to me.
Best thing ever happened to you.
Yes.
With a smile, I love that. All right, so can you tell the folks at home, we keep seeing these images, we showed them moments ago of these takeovers in Navy Yard, near the wharf. What's the point of this? What's happening? I mean, there's nothing for teens in Navy Yard at that hour.
Yes, so there's really nothing going on. They post on Instagram or TikTok something called teen takeovers, where basically teens get together and they take over a spot, which, like Mr. Lorenzo said, there's really no point of taking over when there's really not nothing to do. It's only food, restaurants, and bars down there. There's not really nothing for teens to do. So I guess by them taking over, they're trying to make maybe a point, maybe a message to show that, like, they're not going to listen.
Wow.
That maybe would it be.
Okay, so for the folks watching as well, tell them a bit about you. We have roughly a minute left. I know that, Bryce, you want to be a lawyer when you get older. Why that path? I
want to be a lawyer because I feel like the justice system is unfair. A lot of young black men have been wrongfully accused of things. Like, I just feel like the justice system is just unfair. And somebody needs to fix it, and that would be me.
And you're starting now, we see it. And Bryce, you want to fight a different fire. You want to be a firefighter.
Yeah, I want to be a firefighter. Like, I want to help people, save lives, you know. Like, do things a lot of people can't, you know. Because my grandma wanted me to be a firefighter.
You got to listen to grandma, huh?
Yeah, always.
All right, Denham, I appreciate you. Bryce, thank you for being here
Nice
as well.
to meet
You
you.
guys are clearly on the right path.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
We'll
having
stay in
us.
touch.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So, you know, I want to get back now to an issue I was discussing with Brooke Pinto a few minutes ago. A lot of our neighbors are sounding off right now about Mayor Bowser approving some regulations to hold federal agents accountable in D.C., but not all of the bills on her desk. I want to talk about this a bit more now with Rini Sampath, who has worked as a contractor for various federal agencies and is running for D.C. mayor. Rini Sampath, thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lorenzo. I'm super excited to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
All right, so we know that Mayor Bowser says documenting some of these federal agents who are on scene during use of force cases is a federal issue that Congress should take up. Do you agree with the mayor in this case?
I don't agree with the mayor. I'm really disappointed that she vetoed the companion bill, especially because we are at a time when our trust in law enforcement is very low, and this is, to me, an accountability measure. Our Latino communities are particularly affected by the federal intrusion, ICE presence, use of force at this moment in history. And for me, I see it as a means to make sure that our communities have trust in our law enforcement, and that's what that companion bill was going to do, and unfortunately, it's not in place now.
Yeah, all right, so we know you jumped into this race after that big snowstorm in January. So tell us what happened. Why did that compel you to run for D.C. mayor?
The snowstorm was certainly one part of the larger equation. I have been a director at a cybersecurity company for some time now, working in the change management space, especially with federal government agencies. And so I've seen broken systems. DC government is similarly broken. I've noticed that over and over again. Everything from our 311 app is dysfunctional. It takes 3 years to fix a non-compliant ADA sidewalk, a non-ADA compliant sidewalk. And these are just small examples. So for me, I thought I could either sit on the sidelines, wait this out, see a slate of candidates who I don't think are capable of fixing these issues because they've had 17 years of cumulative service in our government, and we have basic services that don't function, or I jump in the race and I show our constituents, our community, that it's an outsider who can really tackle the problems that DC is facing.
Yeah, on that note, you have called yourself an outsider. You also mentioned that the two front runners are, quote, longtime City Hall insiders. For one, you said is proposing a ton of new programs with no way to pay for them. You didn't call them out by name, but I'm assuming you're talking about Janice Lewis-George here.
Yes, correct.
For the second one, you said another who has more of the same policies that got us here, Kenya McDuffie.
Correct.
I'm assuming. So why are you the better choice then?
Absolutely. For me, it fundamentally comes down to, were you able to do your job well? And I think our front runners are asking for a promotion when they haven't been able to fulfill the basic functions of their job. I want to see a DC government that emphasizes our municipal services. Let's get back to the basics. Let's make sure our roads are repaired. Let's make sure it doesn't take so long for a small business to open up because our permitting rules are so ridiculous. Let's make sure that our vacant units, affordable housing vacant units, don't take on average 13 months to actually fill. I think DC government is flush with dollars, but we're spending that money so ineffectively, and we need a DC government that's going to be able to actually administrate, operate, and I'm the person for that given my background. And meanwhile, we have two city government officials who have legal backgrounds or prosecutors. To me, that's a huge mismatch in job responsibilities, and we need someone who's actually got that experience to drive our city towards results.
Well, people will say, okay, you've been in DC for roughly 10 years now. You have no experience leading in terms of city government. So again, why should they believe that you are the person to take on this job as mayor? Not only are you managing a city, but you're also managing relationships on the Hill and in the White House.
Absolutely. I've been a chief of staff of a count of over 400 plus people. I've managed budgets. I have experience community organizing. I think one of my greatest accomplishments, achievements that I'm proud of, is having been a student rights activist. And so to me, these are the combination of skills that are needed in this moment. We need new energy. We need a fresh face. I bring all of that. And at the same time, this is an opportunity to show DC that there's a next generation prepared to lead. And I think that's exactly what's respected in this moment, is someone who raises their hand and says, you know what, I know that there are problems here locally. Let me be the one to jump in. And I think that combination of the energy, the administrative experience is what's resonating with people, and why we got on the ballot in just a 3-week sprint. We had over 4,500 signatures that we submitted. I'm the first South Asian person to be on DC's ballot in the history of any mayoral race. And I think none of these milestones could have been achieved if not for the fact this is a very viable campaign.
Yeah, so what do you think is DC's biggest threat right now as you run for mayor?
DC's biggest threat is certainly the federal intrusion. I think what we are seeing today in terms of Congress being able to override our laws, the presence of the National Guard, which effectively makes this President Trump's playground, these are all big barriers for us as residents to just live our lives in peace, primarily because I see that type of federal intrusion taking away from our ability to fix the basics. So if you think about the $600 million that Congress is able to override in a snap of their finger, even though they're not elected representatives of ours, that's money that could be going towards housing or schools or fixing our sidewalks and filling the potholes. And to me, taking care of that home rule issue and the statehood issue is fundamentally one of the issues I need to champion as mayor.
Yeah, and let's talk about DC's money really quickly, because we know, you mentioned before, DC is flush with cash, but we know Congress has been meddling a bit, and there's been some uncertainty in terms of the city's finances. Where do you think the city is wasting a lot of its money right now?
100%. This is something that our team has spent so many hours digging into. I've been telling constituents that I've read every single DC auditor's reports.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Really fun. That shows you what a nerd I am and the rest of the team is, but I think that's for the best. And you know, I talk a lot about this being a data-driven campaign. We have a data and analytics team that has gone through all those DC auditor reports to identify where the taxpayer waste is. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. One, the Violence Interrupters program, although very well intentioned, there was one vendor who took $400,000 of taxpayer money and spent that on personal trips and expenses. So this is a small line item, but this is the type of trend or behavior that we're seeing across city government that needs to be squashed immediately. And so for me,
in terms of accountability with spending? Okay.
Absolutely, in terms of accountability with spending. Then you have $500 million of what we call in our team missing money because the STEER Act isn't enforced. And out-of-state drivers from Maryland and Virginia aren't paying their fines. So that's a terrible example, or I should say that's a good example of terrible behavior.
Well, we know the Attorney General has been going after those people, so do you want them to ramp up the efforts? Do you want to put more money behind it? What are you saying here?
I think the Attorney General's office has their own process in which to do that, but I see the Mayor's office as the chief executive of Washington, D.C. If you're the chief executive of Washington, D.C., you need to make sure your agencies, departments are spending that money responsibly and that you're holding them accountable when they're not spending the money responsibly. We know a third of D.C. auditors' reports haven't even been implemented or even been started. To me, that's a huge problem. We have the data, we have the recommendations, but the D.C. government isn't actually executing on its promises, and that's kind of the premise of my campaign. D.C. government doesn't have a money problem. D.C. government doesn't have a values problem. I think our heart's in the right place in terms of taking care of our people with social services, but we have an execution problem, and that's why the entire campaign is focused on let's fix the basics, let's manage our money appropriately, and then let's get this government to a place where people actually trust us.
Yeah, so we know DC's traffic cameras have been in the news as of late because of what we see happening in Congress right now, trying to get rid of the automated enforcement program. Do you think these cameras are legit, or do you want to see them go away? How do you feel about them?
Yeah, it's funny to me because I think the congressional representatives driving this particular issue forward seem to be just inconvenienced by, maybe they're speeding around from one event to another and inconvenienced by the traffic cameras, so have decided that rather than focus on serious social issues or causes or taxpayer waste, they're here to focus on speed cameras. And to me, that is silly because at the end of the day, I referenced to you that data is what's driving our campaign. We've looked at the data. Speed cameras reduce fatalities. Speed cameras are responsible for keeping our streets safer, for making sure families and pedestrians, cyclists can get around without feeling like they're going to be hit by someone traveling at 40, 50 miles per hour on a 25 mile per hour street. And so to me, it's a fundamental enforcement mechanism that we must protect in DC. And so my answer to those congressional representatives is, again, stay out of our business here in DC. We know how to take care of our streets. We know how to take care of our people. And it's a perfect example also of why home rule and statehood matters, because we wouldn't have Congress meddling in our activities, in our safety, in our community.
All right, so finally, someone watching right now, they may be saying, I really like this Rini. I want to know more about her. We know that you didn't meet the threshold for public financing. So how do we know that you're going to be able to sustain your campaign? What do you have in place to get to the finish line?
Absolutely. I think I'm really heartened by the fact that we jumped in just 5 weeks ago, and within a 3-week sprint, we're able to get on the ballot. We earned $35,000 in small dollar donations in just 4 weeks, which is, again, a testament to the energy. Sometimes I wonder if I had jumped in a little earlier, would we be in an any better situation? And part of me thinks yes.
You needed that snowstorm in December, maybe November.
I know, maybe if that happened in October during the fall, but that's not the case. So I think I'm just living by my authentic self and knowing our message is resonating. We have over 2 million impressions across our social media posts currently. My videos, there are a ton of selfie videos that are so organic, are really reaching people. And at the end of the day, I have the faith that fix the basics is a very simple message that's getting through to folks. And then if I were to really get in the weeds with someone, we are switching over to traditional financing. That's going to raise our caps from $200 to $2,000 to allow us to compete with the public financing where tax dollars are being used for the other candidates' campaigns right now. It's a 5-to-1 match. So for us, we are going to now benefit from having a higher cap. And at the end of the day, while I would have loved to stay in the public financing program, there are some strict deadlines that remind me that even that program is not built for political outsiders. It seems to really serve and benefit those who are already inside of city government. And in some ways, I feel like it's a way to, once again, waste our taxpayer dollars. So in some ways, I think the mindset has shifted on traditional financing. I'm excited to drive this campaign using traditional financing, and I certainly think we're going to be able to cross that finish line as long as we continue to be a grassroots, volunteer-powered effort, just like we've been doing, and staying true to our message and true to myself.
Rini Sampath, candidate for DC Mayor. Thank you for coming
Lorenzo.
to the table. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you so much.
All right, so that does it for the DC Beat tonight. I'm Lorenzo Hall. Thank you so much for your time. Truly the greatest gift. We will continue the conversation next Wednesday night at 7. I'll see you then. Good night.